Hello and welcome to the video. So today we're going to be reviewing the new 2022 Porsche Macan. What you see behind me is the base model, and it's actually a courtesy car lent to me by Porsche Brooklands. So big shout out and thank you to them. The reason I have this car is because my Porsche GT4 718 is in for its major service at the moment. More on that in another video where I'll talk about how much everything cost, what they've done, etc, etc. But today, Porsche Macan content. So this being a courtesy car, they don't usually come as fully maxed out or specced as possible, because these are cars that are given to customers whilst customers' cars are in workshops. So for starters, this is running the base wheels. I would swap these out if I were to buy a Macan. I'd swap them out for the nicer, bigger ones. But this is finished in night blue metallic. And night blue metallic sometimes looks black, especially in this kind of overcast weather, but then when you're kind of in the sun under brighter lights, you can see the dark blue. So it's really nice, actually. It kind of gives you that nice contrast, and I quite like the understatedness of kind of a darker color in this Macan. It's also got the chrome bits as well, the chrome on the top, and I guess that ties in nicely with the exhaust tips and the wheels. Some other kind of nice key bits inside this car is we've got the nice panoramic sunroof, which has been lovely to live with. Not that I've opened it very much because of, again, this awful weather. In this version of infotainment, you also get wireless CarPlay, which is very nice. Coming from my 718 GT4, I have to plug the cable in, but then with the Taycans and the new 911s, that's a different infotainment. So this is kind of like a mid-tier level. We've got the PDK, and then all of this is haptic touch. So if I turn that on, and we're going to get a load of binging sounds, but this is all haptic touch now. So instead of a load of buttons which you had before, I can turn my heated seats on, off-road mode, sport mode. It's all very nice. Stop now. So how much does a Macan actually cost? They start from around about £50,000, especially this, which is a base model. If you spec them up and start to kind of add little goodies, you can get them to around about £60,000, comfortably, kind of a good spec base model. The engine is the engine out of a VW GTI. So if you didn't know already, Porsche belong to the Vauxhall Audi group. So Audi, Lamborghini, Volkswagen, and Porsche, they're all within the same group. And so this is the same engine out of the VW GTI. This means that in this particular base Macan, 0 to 60 is 6.4 seconds. You're getting around about 260 brake horsepower and 300 Newton meters of torque. Now the different trim levels is you've got the base Macan, you've got the Macan T, the Macan S, and then the GTS right at the very top. The Macan T is a base Macan, but with a load of options coming as standard. So if you kind of spec up a Macan T with lots of options, you might as well get a Macan T, because you get those options as standard, and then you kind of don't have to spend as much money. But the Macan S gives you the V6 engine, gives you a bit more power, and then a Macan GTS is the turbo engine from the previous model. So while I was kind of wafting around in this car, I've thought, what else will I get instead of this Macan? Because speccing this up to £60,000 is actually quite a lot of money. I was considering maybe the BMW X3. You know, you get good value for that. It's a good brand. Typically with BMWs, you get a lot of packs and options that kind of come as standard, or they don't really add that much money or onto the car. But I had a look, and they actually start from around about £50,000 as well. I did spec one up, and I got it around to £52,000. So you kind of get a few more things as standard, and you don't really whack these up to £60,000. So this is a 10 grand premium over the BMW X3, but I would argue that a Porsche has better residuals than a BMW. So when you finance these two cars, these cars will hold value better, so you'll actually end up spending less money. I then also started to think, would I, instead of getting a base Macan, get a Macan T or get a Macan S? Because I would actually, straight to the conclusion of the end of the video, I would love to buy one of these as a second car to run alongside my GT4. It's been a fantastic wafter. It's amazing to kind of just drive around and not worry about potholes. I've been driving around with one hand on the steering wheel, very dangerously, but it's been super comfy to drive around in. And so I would love to have one of these as a second car. I can't afford a Macan as a second car, but if I did, which model would I get? So I was thinking, would I go to the T model where I kind of get a load of options, or would I go for an S instead? I actually think I would either go for a base Macan or a Macan S and completely miss out on the Macan T. So the reasoning for this is because I think the T models in the Porsche range are actually just marketing gimmicks. They're kind of like a part spin. They don't really matter as much, I think, in the sports models, such as the 911s and the 718s, because you can kind of get bucket seats, you benefit from the lighter glass, the lightweight options. But in these kind of cars, I don't think that they benefit you really that much. I would be buying one of these cars because I wanted the wafting experience, the comfortness, the abilities that I can just kind of get in the car, throw my bags on the passenger seat and drive off. I've not really been using the sport part of this car at all, and I've been hardly putting my foot down on the throttle. But if I did and I wanted a sports car, I would get the V6 option instead and get the Macan S. So I just wouldn't waste my money and time on a smaller engine, but paying the premium for a T. Such a comfy wafter. So I keep saying the word wafter, and we'll go for a drive and I'll show you what I mean. In my GT4, it's quite stressful. It's quite a stressful and intense car to drive, and it makes sense. It's a GT car, and I choose to do that. I choose to enjoy the GT experience every day when I drive the car. But when I drive a comfy car like this, it just makes me think it would be nice to have this as a second car, as a daily. Like I've said, I can't afford two cars. But I've just got in, seatbelt on, turn the car on, arm out the window, slot it in, and I find myself just kind of driving with one hand on the steering wheel. So this is kind of just how I'm finding myself driving around. I'm super high up. I can kind of see everything around me. The bonnet feels miles away. I'm looking down at people when I'm on the motorway. I've had my family in the back, my mum and dad, last night, and it was just nice to be able to take a few passengers to a restaurant afterwards after work. You know, normally in the GT4 I'd have to take two cars, and it's just been nice to have that. Performance wise, again, it's nippy from about 0 to 30 miles an hour. It's still a Porsche, right? It's still a sports brand, so they've still got that GTI engine at the front, so it's still got a little bit of power. So when I put my foot down, it's torquey. It takes off quite quickly and you go, ooh, this is quite fast. But then when you're kind of rolling on the motorway and you're doing 40 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, and then you put your foot down, it's kind of just moving forwards. There's no real speed to it. So I think if you're looking for the performance version of a Macan and you can stretch your money, get the S or the GTS. This is really just a car that you want a nice SUV, you want the nice brand that comes with it, the quality of the materials. If you want that, then I would get I would just save my money and get the base Macan. A little kind of dislikes about this car, it's the haptic feedback touch buttons. The older model had physical buttons that you could press. Again, like my GT4, it's kind of got that old interior. But with this one here, because it's touchscreen, or not really touchscreen, I found that the first time I drove this car, I went to change the temperature of the aircon that was coming out, and I accidentally touched the off-road button. A load of messages came up on the dash and I had no idea what was going on, and it was basically lowering the car. So they're really not that useful. Also, this car has clearly been developed for European or German drivers, or Porsche, when they developed this car, it was a left-hand drive car. And they've put the sport button on the left-hand side of the gear selector. So if you're a left-hand drive car, that's fine, because if you want to go into sport, you hit it. But for me, a right-hand drive car, I have to look over the gear selector to see where the sport button is. It's not a physical button, so I can't quite find it. So I have to look down and take my eyes off the road in order to press the sport button. You don't get kind of sports chrono in the base Macan, so you don't get the kind of Manatino switching dial. So in order to go into sport, it's a little bit dangerous. I really do have to look down and turn it on, and that's kind of my biggest gripe about this car. But yeah, other than that, like I've said, I've absolutely loved living with this. I can't wait to go back and get my GT4 because I do miss it. But like I've said, it's just been nice to, as I'm doing right now, wafting down the road, see a pothole, don't really care, I can go over it. I've been finding that I've been driving with one hand on the steering wheel, which is dangerous and you shouldn't do, but this car is actually encouraging me to drive slowly rather than drive fast. And I have always owned sports and performance cars, and when you drive those cars, it encourages you to put your foot down and kind of drive fast. It encourages you, it gives you that adrenaline. It's going, come on, let's go. But in this one here, even though I can put my foot down, I just find that I'm not doing it at all. It's comfy and easy to live with. And that's why I think, back to my point, I get this model over the T or the S. Kind of with that, I'm going to leave the video here. Short and sweet, but it is a short-term loaner review. I've had this car for a few days now, and I'm looking forward to going and getting my GT4 back. But guys, if you like this video, please like it. Comment down below, let me know what you think. Would you completely write off the base Macan and go straight to the T or the S? I can see why people do it. But if you're new to the channel, subscribe down below. Comment, let me know what you think. And I'll see you later in the next video. Shall we open the sunroof just for fun? It is 9 degrees outside. That's a vibe, isn't it? Come on. I can see, this is going to be very stereotypical and generalizing here, but I can see why rappers buy SUVs or buy kind of G-Wagons and things like that, because it just makes me feel like a boss. I'm just cruising down the motorway, cruising along, or I feel like Jeremy Clarkson just kind of hopping into his Range Rover and going to his farm, albeit this isn't a Range Rover, but it's still that same vibe. I'm just loving that SUV luxury life here. I'm going to close that because it is a bit cold. This is the ultimate wafter. I'm just loving SUV life here right now. Such a lovely car to live with.